Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, you are in for an absolute treat. I am going to be sharing with y'all and ranking, yes, ranking, all of my Hoyas. Every single Hoya I have in my collection, and I'm going to tell you it is not a few. It is a lot of Hoyas that I'm going to be talking about today, but I'm really excited about it. This video is actually voted for by my patrons. I asked them which genus they wanted me to share with all of you, and they voted on Hoyas because I think a lot of them are quite Hoya obsessed, which I mean is fair because I am as well. I have very many, and so that is what we're going to be doing today. Before I get into it though, I want to say if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet, so if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you returning. And without further ado, let's get into this video. It's a lot. There's a lot of Hoyas on this list. I'm pretty sure there's 32 Hoyas that I'm going to be talking about today. The first of which all live in the office shelves here, getting fairly constant grow light for most of the day. This spot doesn't really get much sunlight. You can see it's kind of like half sun right now. I might need to close the blinds just because the sun's going a bit in and out. But this is the first one. It is a David Cummingii, and this comes in 32nd place because it's not that I don't like it. The thing is, I have gotten rid of all of the Hoyas that I wasn't as into, so it's not like I don't like any of these Hoyas, but I was told I needed to rank them all, and so I've ranked them, and this came out fairly, or at the bottom, not just fairly near the bottom. It is a fairly simple Hoya, and I don't know. So the thing is, a lot of my Hoyas are smaller, and it's very possible that they could have gorgeous blooms. Otherwise, I find this one just a little bit boring. There's just not that much to it. Like, the leaf shape is fine. It's nice and plain and waxy, pretty average. It doesn't have spots or anything, or any silver splashes. It grows fairly regularly. It's just, there's nothing special about it. There's nothing that gives it that little bit extra edge where some of my other Hoyas in my collections have that. And so it's just fine. So I'm not gonna spend any more time talking about that one because I don't really care. At 31st place, we have this one here, which is a Hoya Crimson Queen. And again, this one is just fine. I think carnosus are pretty cool in general. I have a couple of more carnosus that are quite a bit higher up on this list, but I just don't really care that much about it. I think it's cool that they turn, they go from pinker to more creamy to white around the edges. I think it's awesome, but I just feel like I don't necessarily need one of these in my collection in order to be happy with it. But it is a really cool one still, and I'm not planning on getting rid of it anytime soon because, like I said, it is cool, but it's not my go-to Hoya if I was gonna have to pick, so it stays at 31. And then in the 30th position, we've got this little guy. This one, it is a no ID. I am not exactly familiar with what it is. When I was recording the video for this, I didn't yet know that this is a Hoya Rebecca, but my friends over on Instagram helped me out with the ID, and so this is a Hoya Rebecca, even though I refer to it as one that's a no ID. The thing is, with me and Hoyas, I find them very difficult to describe, to try and figure out what they are, and so the only way I can figure it out is through asking people on Instagram, asking my plant friends. Also, I do want to say thank you to anyone who did respond to my Instagram stories asking about IDs because they did actually help. I did figure out what a lot of them were because of that. This one I'm still not 100% on, but I don't know, I feel like I like it slightly more in leaf shape than the Kamingii. It looks like it just like branches out a little bit more than that one and generally creates a slightly bushier plant, which I prefer, and I feel like I can get more out of this one. In position 29, we have my Hoya Rosita. So this is a bit of a weird one for me because I genuinely think that if this plant wasn't such a prolific bloomer for me, I would probably get rid of it. And that sounds a little bit bad. It's fine, to be honest. It's just okay. It's living in my southwest facing window, like right in it. It hangs in it. And I think that's why it has been such a prolific bloomer. And it's also caused this sort of sun stress on the leaves, the sort of pinkiness that you're getting in there. That is because it is getting quite a lot of light. Literally, whenever there is light, it is getting light. And if there's full sun, it gets full sun. And that has meant that over this past spring and summer, it has bloomed loads. So frequently. Some like really gorgeous, purpley, really, I feel like golden syrup flavored flowers. I say flavored because I mean I've tasted all of the blooms of all of the Hoyas I have in my home. This one, its sap tastes like golden syrup. It's actually quite a sappy one, and so it's probably not the best if you have carpet underneath it, but if this one wasn't blooming so much, I wouldn't keep it because I don't particularly care much about the sort of leaf shape and color. It's not something that really pulls me in or draws me in. The leaves are kind of matte almost, and I don't know, I feel like I like them shiny or I like them hairy. When they're matte like this, I feel like they collect dust really, really well. I think this one still has some spots on it from the silver treatment because it's so like luscious. It's quite hard to get all of the sulfur off of it. But I can't bring myself to get rid of it, even though I don't necessarily like it, just because it blooms so much and the blooms make me happy. Hoya blooms make me happy. They are so freaking cool. When my Hoyas bloom, it's like the best thing in the world, and it just means I can't get rid of this one, which is kind of sad because it takes up like some absolutely prime real estate in my home. Being in a southwest facing window, that's like top-notch spot, especially here in the UK where we don't get all that much light. So it's a bit of a shame, but it's fine, I guess. I'm not gonna get rid of it, but I'm also not gonna love it forever either. And then at 28, we have the Hoya Australis Lisa, which I've had for ages and ages, and this one gets not that much light. It's on a shelf that gets mother grow light for, I think, like 12 hours a day. But the mother grow lights aren't excessively bright or anything. I wouldn't call them bright direct light like I would some of my other grow lights, and so I think that is why it is leaning more towards green in these sort of middle bits. I think if I had it under brighter light, that like middle section that's light green could get to like a bright yellow or white, so it'd be even lighter, and I think I would probably like it better if that were the case, but I'm not that into it. And the new leaves, when they come in, they're a little bit red and pink and like it's cool and all. I don't particularly care. And so this is one that, like, if I had to get rid of plants, I would probably get rid of, but I do still like it. I'm not gonna get rid of it if I don't absolutely have to, because it's still pretty cool. These next ones are actually two that I am going to be putting into a single listing because I am pretty sure they are both Hoya verticulatas, but they come in at 27th place. And while I think they are both verticulatas, because I feel like they look both like verticulatas, they have quite different leaf shapes, so I'm still unsure. Maybe there's sort of some subdivision within those that I am not fully aware of, so maybe I should just like put them together. But I feel like there are differences in the texture of the leaves, like the one here has like abs to it, where this one tends to be a little bit more smooth in its leaf. So I think I could probably put them both in the same pot if I wanted to, and I wouldn't be that upset with it because they look similar enough that it's not a problem. I am a fan of joining Hoyas together, so maybe that's something I can do. And both of these I don't have on trellises, even though I probably should, because they are getting a bit scraggly, if you couldn't tell. I think they would probably benefit from having a little bit of support in there, but I don't have that many trellises, so I guess that's something I need to get more of going forward so they can be a little bit more supported. Though I do quite like them trailing down. I do love a trailing down Hoya moment. It is quite a cool thing. This little guy here is number 26, and it is a Hoya Crinkle 8, which is quite a fun little Hoya. For the longest time for me though, this one was living with like 1 or 2 leaves. It was just not doing very much until this summer. I think that's quite a recurring theme throughout this video, is I've had like quite a lot of luck this year, but I think it's just because that's the time frame I've been dealing with Hoyas in. I feel like we've finally gotten to the point where it's clicking. And this one is just a fun, sort of funky one. The leaves sort of have these indentations in them, and it just adds a little bit more visual interest to the plant rather than just being flat. But at the same time, I'm not like obsessed with this one or anything. It's cool, it's growing quite well for me now, but I'm not like over the moon about it. Coming in 25th place, we have this bad boy. This is a Hoya Mathilde or Mathilde, not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but it is just characterized by these little like kind of small button leaves. But this is actually a hybrid Hoya, which I think is really cool. It's a hybrid between a Carnosa and a Serpens, which are both Hoyas that I have that are slightly higher up on this list, but I think it is a fun one. Mine isn't growing particularly well, and that's why it isn't higher on this list. If it were growing better, I think I would probably like it more. That being said, I do pretty much ignore it, so it is kind of my own fault that it's not looking perfect. You can see I've wrapped it around a trellis, but at the same time, it just looks like it's just not as happy as I think it could be. So that is a me problem, and I don't know, also some of the leaves are a bit wrinkly down here. Not positive what that's about. Like usually it's because of dehydration, but I know this one isn't dehydrated because I literally watered it the other day. So it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's absolutely fine. And then next on the list, we have this cool one. This is a Hoya Memoria. The Hoya Memoria has more length in its leaves, and they have sort of silver spots on them, which is pretty cool. It makes for quite a nice plant. Mine is on a trellis, but it's a bit heavy for the trellis. I need to probably redo it. And also the vine that I have wrapped around has decided it wants to die off, so that's a me problem. Again, I don't really care for the ones in this office that much. They tend to go a little bit more neglected by me just because I don't have access to the space 100% of the time like I do some of the other spaces in my home, but that doesn't mean I don't love them any less. And I think if I could get more of them to this sort of variegation on it. Is it called variegation when they're spotty, splashy? I'm gonna call it variegation. When the splashes get like sort of this intense, I do quite like it. I don't know, like I do like the plain splashes as well, but I think I like them better when there are just more of them. And then next up at 23, we have the Hoya Linearis, which is this really, really cool one. And I think, so I have grown this one exclusively from cuttings. I think I had like maybe 3 or 4 cuttings, and they weren't very big. And so the fact that I've gotten to this point is really, really freaking amazing. I think this one would be higher up on the list, like if it were bigger, but I think I am growing it really well. It's known for these like almost green beanie looking leaves that are very fuzzy and soft. I could just sit here stroking this one all day, and I probably need to chop and prop it at some point. I could probably chop it in half and then kind of double the thickness of it. But again, this is one that I pretty much ignore and it's still doing fantastically. I'm gonna take that out. A previous propagation that didn't go as well as I had wanted it to. But again, this is just, it just tickles me. I love the little furriness of it, and even the runners. This is a little runner that's not got any leaves on it. It's so furry and cute. Like, how can you not like that? It's just a really cool one, and it's perfectly happy here. It gets some grow light, not loads, but it just lives right there, being a happy little camper. I'm actually a little bit surprised that this one isn't higher up on the list. This is my Hoya retusa, and it is one of the weirdest, most interesting Hoyas I have in my collection, because instead of having like quite broad leaves, it has leaves closer to a linearis, but it doesn't grow in the linear fashion. It kind of grows in little bursts that kind of look like pom-poms or fireworks to me, and it's just really exciting and fun and a bit zany, which is really cool. And I really love the shape of these leaves. Look at that. It's like a little, like it's long and skinny, but then there's a little heart on top, which I think is freaking adorable. And another cool thing about this one is that when it flowers, because this one has flowered for me, it doesn't grow in like bursts like a lot of other Hoyas do. It grows in single flowers. So instead of like 17 flowers growing from a single peduncle in like a, it grows one from each individual peduncle. And I feel like that's kind of cool, because if the like foliage was bursty and the blooms were bursty, it might be a little bit too bursty. It's not even a word, but whatever. And it would just get quite intense. And so I feel like it's kind of the perfect balance for this one to be able to have single blooms. And they're like this gorgeous little white stars that grow in. And it is a really fun, cool one. So glad I've got this one. It's fun and cool and very different. Also, this one has grown loads of runners before. I have recently chopped them off. And I think it's probably because I've not got it in the brightest of spots. But that's a me problem, and I could probably just put it somewhere brighter. Maybe a window. Tempting. Now we're gonna do a bit of a rapid fire here, because I have several that are all pretty small, that are all not necessarily similar. They do have many differences, but I can't talk about each of them for very, very long. So at number 21, we have the Hoya Serpens, which has these adorable little round buttony leaves, and they are like a little bit furry and a little bit splashy. This one is actually the first one I ever soil propagated, and I just popped the cutting straight into the soil, and it's done really, really well for me there. At 20, I cannot pronounce this one's name to save my life. It is a Huschelliana inner variegated. You can see it has the inner variegate on it. It's pretty cool. It's fairly new to me, so I can't really say that much about it, but I do really like the sort of leaf shape and variegation on it. I think it's quite cool, and it's growing longer than some of my other ones that are quite by it in the cabinet here. Actually, all of these are in my IKEA cabinet. We have the Hoya Shepherdii. This is a very new one for me as well, and it's just got these really long bean-like leaves. They really, really look like green beans. And this one has a peduncle on it. It was actually blooming for me when one of my patrons actually gave it to me, which is absolutely the sweetest. It's cool. It's still very new to me, so I can't really say that much about it. As well as this one, I think this is called a Catsburgii. And this is one that is, like, you wouldn't think that it would be this high on my list at number, 18? But like, because it's fairly plain looking, but this is one that is not very like popular in the UK. It's not grown very often. I've only like spoken to one other person that's ever had this one, maybe, well, two, the person I got it from, and then Perky Plants are the only people that have had this one. It's not really one that shows up in shops very often, but I've just got it rooting in water. It's actually probably time to pop it in soil now that it's got its initial roots. I can pot it up, but even though it is kind of plain, it's really cool, and I'm glad that I have it in my collection. We've got a weird one here at number 17, the Hoya Thomsonii, and this one, it is like extremely fuzzy. Probably one of the fuzziest plants I have in my collection. It is just covered in these little hairs, like the fronts and the backs of the leaves. The backs of the leaves are almost hairier. It is so cool and weird, and I think once they like mature a little bit, they don't grow out of their hairiness, but the hairiness spreads out. So when they're really ditty, they are super hairy, and then they get less hairy as they like fill out their full size. But this is a cool one. It's fairly uncommon, and it's just a bit of fun and funkiness. This is probably the slowest growing Hoya in my entire life experience of growing Hoyas. This is a Hoya compacta variegated. And I know Hoya compacta grow very slowly. They're known for that. The variegated ones, of course, are going to grow even slower. And I know this one has grown for me because it is bigger than when I originally got it, but it is taking its sweet time, and because it grows so compact, hence the name, it's really hard to see that sort of growth in here. And so while it doesn't look like it's gotten that much bigger, I know it has, and it is a really cool one. This is another one where the leaves come in a bit pink and then they fade to the creamy white color. I don't really have any like good examples to show you of that right now. And this one has also been and done through flat mites, and I think I've been able to get rid of them. This one was really hard to get into all the crevices in, but I'm pretty positive we are good to go. It has started growing again since I did my big flat mite treatment of 2023, so we are back in business with this one and loving it. And then the last one in this rapid fire is Hoya Carrii. I think it's not a Hoya Carrii, the heart-shaped Hoya, which I don't have anymore. I got rid of. I just wasn't loving it that much. It was the plain green one. I didn't really care. This, I'm pretty sure it's a Carrii, spelled with a C. And this one, it is so strange because it is kind of velvety, and it's darker than a lot of the other Hoyas in my collection. And the leaves are just so cool. They look like very normal leaves, but they're super dark, almost black in some cases, and velvety, which is so unlike any other Hoya that I have in my collection, and that's why it's made its way into the top half, into place number 15. It's just so cool and different, and doing really well for me, and so I'm very proud of it, and I do really like it. Coming in at 14, we have my Hoya Croniana mixed pot, which I am going to class as one plant, even though there are two different types of Hoya Croniana in here. We've got the Hoya Croniana Splash, which is these dark leaves with a little bit of splashing, and then the Super Silver here, which is almost like the opposite. It's almost like it's been inverted, but it just has way more silver on the leaves. Some of them are almost entirely silver, very silver in there, but I've joined these two together because they have exactly the same care needs, and they're perfectly happy being in the same pot. This one has grown phenomenally for me over the years. I got it as quite a small plant, and now it is extremely long. I can't even show you the bottom of it all the way because I touched the ceiling, but it has grown amazing, and this was actually my first Hoya to ever bloom, so it does have a bit of sentimentality for me. And this year, similarly to the Rosita, it has popped off in blooming. It was constantly blooming this summer, just over and over and over again. I wonder, let me see a peduncle that's not been used a bunch, but you can see there's just like layers and layers from where the blooms have come in and fallen off. It is important when you have Hoyas to not cut off the peduncles if you want them to continue flowering from that spot. Once the flowers kind of wilt off, they will just drop off. So don't cut the peduncle off. Don't need to worry about that at all. But this is just, it has grown so well for me, and again, I think that's partially because it is in my southwest facing window. This one is in the window as well, and just absolutely loving the sun. It doesn't get sun stressed or anything, and I like that it kind of keeps the green color because I much prefer the green color, and I probably need to chop it and propagate it, but the thing is I don't feel like I can because there's literally peduncles at the very freaking ends of these things. There's peduncles, and so I don't want to chop it because then I'd be cutting off peduncles. But it's okay. This one has bloomed so much that I think I could probably get away with it and like not be losing too much out of it. Also because Cleo can like nearly reach, if she jumps up and like paws at it, she can kind of reach these. So probably not the best anymore, but I'm pretty positive that Hoyas are non-toxic to cats, so it wouldn't be a problem. I just don't want her like beating up my plants if she can help it. This next one is another mixed pot, and this is my mixed pot of Hoya pubicalyx. I've got so many different types of pubicalyx in here. This was actually, I think, the first Hoya mixed pot that I ever made, and it's because I couldn't not necessarily tell the difference. I can't tell the difference. There's different plants in here. You can kind of tell because there's very, very different leaves. Some are like this long, skinny, very dark, and then others are like massive and have more splashing to them, and then there's some that are sort of in the middle. There's 3 different, at least, types of Hoyas in here. I think there's a pubicalyx, just like average pubicalyx, a pubicalyx splash, a pubicalyx big leaf potentially, and then a pubicalyx purple Hawaiian. So maybe there's 4 in here. There could be more. I honestly don't know, but the Hoya pubicalyx is the one that originally like got me into Hoyas. I saw a pubicalyx online and I loved the sort of really dark leaves with the splashing on them, and it just sold me. I didn't get one for quite a long time. I think they were still not relatively new to the scene, but you couldn't get them for like super duper cheap at that point in time, and so I didn't buy myself one for quite a while, and so it was just on my wish list, and now I have a bajillion of them. But until very, very recently, this one has been hanging in my window as well, and I think it has bleached the leaves a little bit. I think I prefer the pubicalyx when it is a little bit darker. I mean, that being said, when the leaves come in on this, I think this is the Hawaiian purple, they come in like nearly black, which is absolutely freaking awesome. But then they fade through green to lighter green. If they could stay around this green, I think that would be my ideal. But I think that is because they were in a place with such high light that they were just generally lighter leaves. I have since moved it to a slightly darker place, so I guess we can see in time whether or not it grows itself a little bit darker. It's also got hella runners in here. I've not got it trellised. I do like this one trailing down, though the bits that are trailing down aren't necessarily doing that much. Got a little bit of new growth, but not tons and tons and tons. So it's a cool one. I like it. And then one that is on my shelves, my sort of new shelf setup, is my Parviflora. This one is so, so cool. I feel like this is what I want the coloring of my pubicalyx to get to. This sort of dark green with the splashes. It is just absolutely everything. I just really, this is kind of like what the David Cummingii looks like, but plus splashes, which makes it so much higher up on the list. I think as soon as you get splashes into Hoyas, it just becomes something so, so special, and I love them so much more. I think that's just why I got into Hoyas originally, because I loved their splashes. I think they're so beautiful, and This one kind of looks constellation-y in its speckling, which is really, really cool. And I'm pretty sure I had this one living in a prop box for ages and ages, and that's why it's got all these sort of wiry aerial roots on it, because it was in like very, 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 very high humidity, and so the roots grew out on it. And since it's been taken out of the like prop box and the really high humidity and put into normal home humidity, which is, I feel like, what, 65-70% most of the time, the little roots it had dried out a little bit. So maybe this is another one that I can get going on a trellis sometime soon, but it is like, it's just so cool and cute, and it reminds me of the night sky. What's not to love about that? In spot number 11, we have the Hoya globulosa Welsh Mountain Zoo. It's another one of the fuzzy, furry ones. This one's actually softer than the Thomsonii. It feels much more like velvet than that one does. And this one, when the new leaves come in, they're like cutest, tiniest, fuzzy little things. I don't have any new leaves on it right this second, but I probably will soon. I think there's probably going to be one coming in here. It's got a bit of a runner in the minute, and I have chopped it because it was going a bit all over the place. But this one is a really, really cool one that is called the Welsh Mountain Zoo because it was cultivated at the Welsh Mountain Zoo in Wales, which is in the north of Wales, which is pretty cool. You wouldn't expect a Hoya to be cultivated in Wales, but this one is. I mean, it's obviously not my favorite because it's not at number 1, but it is really high up there in my estimations, and I'm really, really glad that I have this one in my collection. We're now getting into the top 10, my top 10 favorite Hoya, and these next 3 are all kind of similar. They're all very, very new to me, but they're ones that I have wanted and sought after for quite a long time, and that's why they are so high on the list. They're ones that are like amazing Hoyas. They could potentially raise up in the ranks once I've had them for longer and they've been a bit more established in my collection. So at number 10, we have the Hoya Nova Ghost. It is this cool little one. Like I said, I've not had it for long enough to be able to talk about it for that much time, but it's got these really cool splashy leaves, and they're waxy on the top, but like velvety on the bottom, and not as furry as the globulosa, but like ever so slightly hairy. And this is a really cool little one, quite new to me, but really it got up there quite quickly. We've got a Hoya Wilbur Ghost, or actually 2 Hoya Wilbur Ghosts in at number 9. I will eventually pot these into the same thing. I only just got this one, and this one's only just started growing for me. You can see the sort of new growth that's coming out. I think it had flat mites, which sucked. But this is a Hoya Wilbur Graves, and eventually I will pot this into one thing, but this is just one of those Hoyas that I've been lusting after for a very long time. Look at those sort of perfect, really, really silvery leaves, super duper splashy, and so, so cool. I'm so glad I've gotten this one, and I kind of love the sort of like alternative emo-ness of it being called a Wilbur Graves. I mean, I'm sure that's not why it's called Graves, but it's just really cool and doing really well, and I'm hoping that I can get this one to grow really big and beautiful. If I do, then it will raise up in my estimations. And then the last one in this sort of set of new ones is my Hoya Polyneura Broget, aka a variegated Hoya Polyneura. You can see the little variegations on there. And this one, it has massive potential to get higher in my estimations just because I absolutely love my Polyneura. You'll have seen that I haven't spoken about it yet, so it's obviously in the top 10, so why wouldn't the variegated version be in the top 10 as well? Eventually, I could actually join this in with my other one and make a joint pot. That is a good shout, but like I said, it's new and I don't want to like while it's adjusting to my home, I don't really want to mess with it, but it's just a shape that I like, a leaf type that I like, plus splashes. There's no words for how cool it is. I just love it so much. Coming in at number 7, we have this one. This is a Hoya carnosa, just the sort of typical one, like related to the Crimson Queen and Princess, but it is not variegated at all in its leaves. They are a little bit splashy, which is fun, but it is a lot plainer. But you would probably think this would be lower down on my list, but it is an heirloom plant, which is really, really cool. It's actually cuttings from my friend's plant, and she got her plant from her grandfather, who has had his plant for years and years and years, I think like decades. I think it's like 50 or 70 years. I'll make sure to ask my friend and put it on the screen, but it has been alive for decades. It is an old plant, and that's what makes it even cooler. It baffles me that Hoyas can grow so well for so long. It makes me really happy, and it makes me feel really lucky to have a piece of this, that my friend wanted to share this sort of heirloom plant with me. It brings me joy, and it's also grown phenomenally. It is just really going for it in here. I think it's maybe 1 or 2 cuttings, and it has just exploded around the trellis it is on. I've looped it around several times at this point, and it doesn't show any signs of stopping anytime soon. And I just, even though it's so cool and so fun, and I feel like even though it's not a sort of crazy, exciting visually, it's got that sentimentality to it that makes me happy and makes it so high on my list. My number 6 Hoya is My Hoya New Guinea Ghost, and this is actually the 3rd New Guinea Ghost I've had, but that's how much I like it. I like this type of plant so much that I will try it again and again because I think that they are so cool. So this Hoya, it's got super duper light silvery leaves. There we go. And they grow like quite long and skinny, like wow, almost. And it's doing so well. And it's actually, this one's kind of got like dark spots on it as well, which I do quite love. It's just such a cool one. And this is another one that if you sun stress it, it can go really, really pink, and the whole leaf can turn pink because that's just how it does. When I had my old one in my Rudsta cabinet underneath the, what's it called? The Arcadia Jungle Dawn grow light, that was too bright for it, and it was getting massively sun stressed, and it was like this beautiful pinky purple color, and it just made the plant like extra cool. Like I say, I don't necessarily want to have fully pink plants a lot of the time, but I just feel like in Hoyas, something about it just like, it tickles me somewhere, and the sort of color that this one turns to is just peak loveliness. So I'm hoping that 3rd time's the charm on this one, and that I can keep it growing well. So far, so good, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Got a couple of splashy ones in 5th and 4th place. Coming in at number 5, we have the Hoya Obovata Splash that I have here. This one is just so freaking cool. I got this as a cutting years and years and years ago, and for the longest time it was not growing. It didn't do much. I think I just had like this one leaf here for ages, but I think during that time it was just taking time to establish, and now I think mostly this year it has gone and given me leaf after leaf after leaf and some crazy runner that's smacking me in the face. But this one, I think it will definitely rise up further in the ranks once it gets to be slightly bigger, because look at those leaves. I love the sort of roundness of them. All of them are super duper round, and the splashes it has on it, they're just amazing, and it's just so satisfying to look at, and it makes me happy. And maybe I should put this on a trellis. I'm not sure whether or not I want to. It does have a very, very thick stem, so I'm thinking maybe I don't, and I just kind of let it trail down a lot. Eventually I can take cuttings and make, oh my god, could you imagine like a giant bushy trailing obovata plant? That would be freaking amazing. If that could happen, I would be over freaking joyed. So one day I hope I can make that happen. This one, number 4, is my Hoya parasitica, which I think has been reclassified as a verticulata now, and I know I had a verticulata earlier, 2 verticulatas earlier, but this one I call it my parasitica because that's what it is to me. And again, this is one that is just so full and grown so well in the time I have had it. I have looped it around its trellis about a billion times. For the longest time it was living in my IKEA cabinet, and I think that's kind of where it got its really good start and started growing really, really well, and now it's just living on these shelves and is very, very happy here and producing some really lovely big leaves. Again, these ones are more on the round side and have some splashes, but I really love this sort of shiny dark green to them. I think there's just something so, so special. And this one's really cool if you give it too much light, if you kind of, oh, what's it called? It's not sunburn. Oh gosh, I can't remember the word. When it gets exposed to too much sun or light, not necessarily too much, but a lot of it, all of these little spots, instead of being a sort of silvery color, they go super duper pink, which is, I think it's fun and cool. I personally, I'm not the biggest fan of pink in plants, and so while I think it is fun, I don't think it needs that in order to, I don't think it needs it. So I prefer it to be more green on green variegation. I think that looks cool, and I'm just so proud of this one. This is another one that I grew from like basically nothing, and it has over the years just become an absolute staple to my collection. I haven't repotted it in a long time. I don't even, oh, maybe I should. Look at those roots in there. It has been ages since I've repotted. I'm pretty sure like years. It has been living in this old candle pot for the entirety of its life in my collection. So yeah. Oh, also I think this one is called the Parasitica Big Leaf Splash, potentially. I think that's just because it's got nice splashy big leaves. So yeah, we're getting into the ones that I'm just like obsessed with now. I'm really into a lot of them, but I feel like the sort of top 10 in here I could get so excited about. In 3rd place with the bronze medal, we have this beautiful Hoya Crimson Princess. This is another Hoya carnosa, but inner variegated in there. How I remember it's different from the Crimson Queen is that the queen wears the crown, aka the variegation is on the outside, an outer variegated carnosa, whereas the princess wears the dress, which is the inside. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but it makes sense to me, and I absolutely love this plant. And even though it's not my most spectacular Hoya, it's like so high up on this list for slightly sentimental reasons. This was my first ever Hoya. It was the first Hoya I had in my collection, and I actually got it from cuttings from a plant from my cousin, which I don't even know if she has the plant anymore. She's not that great at plants, so this could be the only bit left from that plant, very possibly. But I grew this from tiny little cuttings, like I think 3 2-leaf cuttings. So tiny, 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 and it has taken its absolute sweet time to get to this point. Rooting Hoyas, it takes a while. They're not necessarily quick growing plants, especially from small sizes from early on when they're juvenile. They're not necessarily fast. Once they get bigger, they grow exponentially faster because they've got more leaves to like soak up the light and photosynthesize with. But I just love this one so much, and that's why I have it pride of place in one of my favorite pots as well. It's just so, so cool, and I love the sort of dark carnosa leaves with the inner variegation on them. That contrast in there makes for such a beautiful plant, and every single leaf that comes out is a little bit different. Also, I mean, you'd be remiss not to talk about it. It's kind of hard to show you in here. Okay. In there, we've got some pinkage in there. When new leaves come out, new growth, it actually comes in a pinky color, and eventually it slowly fades to this more creamy white, which is stunning. And I do prefer the white rather than it stay pink, so I'm not mad that it fades, but it is like a cool bonus for this one. I think this one could very well move into a top spot even once I get it to bloom. My biggest goal for all of my Hoyas is to get this one to bloom because it was my first, because I grew it from cuttings. So all of this work is mine. If I can get it to bloom, that would just be the frickin' best. So fingers crossed, maybe one day we can get there. My silver medal Hoya, the one in second place, is my Crassio petiolata Splash. Yes, that is an absolute freaking mouthful, but I could not be more obsessed with the sort of leaves on this one. The coloration is beautiful. Even the backs of the leaves, they're not splashy, but you kind of get more into that reptilian vibe, which I do think is cool when combined with splashes. If it's got splashes on it, and lots of them, like the Crassio petiolata Splash has, it just becomes extra special to me. And again, this one I was able to grow from very, 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 very small cuttings, and it has just boomed over the last couple years. I think this summer especially, it is just doing really well. I think because I've finally got my bearings when it has come to Hoyas, a lot of the ones that I've had for a while that weren't necessarily doing amazing for the last few years are finally starting to like come into their own, and this one is absolutely no exception. And I mean, it's on a trellis and it's got like one really full part. I think hopefully I can get it to continue filling the trellis out, similar to my parasitica. I would love if it could get more full, but I love it so much already. And this one, it's dealt with flat mites twice. I know for sure it has had flat mites. I don't think it has them anymore. I've treated it enough, and I haven't had flat mites in my collection for a little bit now. But this, the fact that it can deal with those and still give me these sort of pretty leaves, it deserves so much praise in my book. And last, but absolutely not least, coming in at first place, our gold medal winner is one. Those of you who know my collection probably knew that this one was coming. I can barely show you. This is my Hoya Polyneura, and I am absolutely obsessed with this one. It has taken me a hot minute to get it to grow, but it has this summer as well really taken a liking to me. So Hoyas, I mean, I don't know if this is true or just something that I'm telling myself to make myself feel better, but the first year I have a Hoya, it tends to sit pretty dormant and not do very much. It's like it's getting used to my home. The second year, it'll like start to grow, and then the third year is when it absolutely starts popping off and putting out new growth left and right. And I feel like that is exactly what's happened with this one. It has finally gotten to the stage where it is growing really well for me, and that's part of why it's in the top spot. Another reason is it matches my tattoo. Oh, am I gonna be able to show you that? So the leaves on my tattoo here are like actually made up leaves, but they match the fishtail Hoya leaves perfectly. Yeah. And so it's just, it makes me really happy, and it's just so cool. And this one, it also has a little bit of variegation in it, ever so slightly, got some splashes. So, I mean, maybe one day it'll go more. I suppose if I put it in brighter light, but I don't want to put it in too bright of light because I don't want it to lose this lovely dark shiny green. And I mean, the shapes of the leaves, I'm just obsessed with it. And it wouldn't be my plant collection without a Hoya polyneura at this point. And also this one's like survived like a quite bad infestation of flat mites. It's like dealt through that. It's had thrips before. It's gone through so much with me, and it is still kicking and putting out some beautiful new growth. And so we're just in such a good spot, and it makes me so happy, and I couldn't imagine not having it in my home. So yeah, that is the end. That is the winner of my Hoya ranking, the top Hoya in my collection. Oh, that was a lot. I've been talking for several hours here in my time, and I need to go make myself a cup of tea. But thank you so much for joining me on this epic Hoya ranking journey. I really hope you liked this video. I hope that you got some inspiration, maybe some wish list plants in there, because I do have quite a lot of really cool Hoyas. I'm also super keen, based off of my collection, do you find that I'm missing any Hoyas? Are there any Hoyas that you feel like I could like have in my collection and absolutely love? Let me know them down below. Oh my god, what's the word? I've been talking for too long. Suggestions. All suggestions will be taken into consideration, and maybe I will get some more down. I'm definitely not going to stop buying Hoya. That's for sure. I don't think I could at this point, because I am a Hoya head. I absolutely love them, and I hope you do too. I'm sure if you're here and you got to this point in the video that you do too. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future. If there's any other houseplant collections, like of different genuses you'd like me to talk about and rank, let me know down below and I can make that happen for you, and subscribe for more. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!